Kia ora koutou, welcome and hello. We will begin today's presentation by introducing ourselves. My name is Sarah Probine, and presenting with me today is Jo Perry, Dr. Rachael Burke, Joanne Alderson, Dr. McAlevey, and your Heta-Lensen. Our research team are all initial early childhood teacher educators working across a range of institutes in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We've been collaborating together since 2021, and we would like to acknowledge the members of our team who are not able to be with us today, Mary Liz Broadley and Helen Wrightson.
We thought we would begin today's presentation by contextualising early childhood education in New Zealand. Children in Aotearoa, New Zealand can attend an early childhood service between the ages of 0 to 6 years. Enrolment is not compulsory and parents can choose from a range of provisions. All early childhood education settings are guided by the national curriculum Te Whāriki. This curriculum, first published in 1996, became world-renowned due to its bicultural framework, which voices a strong commitment to upholding the rights, culture and language of Māori children and their families, who are the tangata whenua, meaning the original inhabitants of New Zealand, as well as acknowledging the cultures and identities of all children. The early childhood curriculum is known for its non-prescriptive approach that provides principles for curriculum development and makes space for a diverse range of philosophical, cultural and theoretical lenses to inform teaching and learning as each setting weaves their own curriculum. Despite the strengths of the curriculum, the early childhood sector in New Zealand has been significantly impacted by political, economic and social factors throughout the past 2 decades. The New Zealand Office of Early Childhood's annual confidence survey in 2022 suggests that the sector is in crisis. 3 times the number of participants suggested the government is going in the wrong direction than the 21% who disagreed. 63% also felt that things would worsen over the next few months, as opposed to 4% who did not. These are not hopeful statistics for the sector moving forward. Although the sector responded to the pandemic lockdowns with an array of innovative ideas, the current economic issues of high cost of living have added further to the demands on early childhood teachers, such as high ratios, administration and compliance demands, and also adding to the pressure on centres. This is reflected in the number of ECE teachers moving to primary teaching or leaving teaching completely. The government's recent budget has offered little to ECE to stop the current decline in standards and quality. Despite evidence that the ECE sector in New Zealand is currently in crisis, it is also a sector renowned for its resilience and its commitment to quality. Our research is focused on locating stories of quality with a focus on inquiry-based project learning in this context. Inquiry-based project learning is an approach where children are encouraged and supported to lead their own learning as they explore and discover answers to their own questions through exploration and dialogue with their peers and teachers. Children work collaboratively, often utilising the arts and other valued cultural tools. In doing this, they represent and adapt their ideas by co-constructing new ideas over time. Interest in children's inquiry-based learning has recently grown as more teachers in both the early childhood and primary sectors recognise its potential to foster children's curiosity and engagement in their learning. In New Zealand, a myriad of different theoretical and pedagogical approaches have influenced how teachers engage in this approach. One of the most significant international influences has been the Reggio Emilia approach, as one of the most influential aspects of this socio-constructivist approach has been children's collaborative inquiry-based projects. Whilst the pedagogical ideas of Reggio Emilia have been explored and reinterpreted by early childhood teachers for several decades, it has been argued that transplanting pedagogical ideas from one very different context to another without deep examination about what these ideas mean for the new context can create misunderstandings. Alcock and Ritchie also raised concern that looking further afield for pedagogical inspiration may overshadow homegrown possibilities, in particular a commitment to bicultural practice which Te Whāriki so strongly advocates for. Whilst the international resources examining inquiry-based project learning are numerous, little research in New Zealand has been conducted on how this approach has been interpreted in this context.
This dearth of research in Aotearoa, New Zealand, has provided the rationale for this study. which seeks to understand more about the range of influences that have shaped how teachers work with this approach. We wonder what aspects of these influences have been most impactful. We've also examined how differing interpretations of inquiry-based project learning play out in the classroom and what this means for children's learning. It is our intention that this study will illuminate and extend understandings of this approach in Aotearoa, New Zealand. The project is positioned in an interpretivist qualitative paradigm and is underpinned by bioecological and sociocultural theories. These theories recognise knowledge is constructed and is influenced by a complex web of contextual factors, including relationships, interactions, cultural values, beliefs, and history. The methodological framework draws upon narrative inquiry, which supports our intention to seek the stories of early childhood teachers and communities and their experiences with inquiry-based project work with children. Phase 1, completed in 2021, comprised a survey distributed to all centres registered on the national database in New Zealand. 63 centres who use inquiry-based project learning as a teaching approach responded to the survey. Phase 2, which we are currently completing, gave us the opportunity to immerse ourselves in the experience of 6 early childhood communities across New Zealand and learn more about the unique context of each setting's environments, histories, and their inquiry-based approaches. We have observed inquiries in action and have interviewed each teaching team. During Phase 1, the research team worked collaboratively to analyse the questionnaire responses, identifying similarities and anomalies, as well as the depth and comprehensive nature of some responses. We are currently analysing the data collected during Phase 2.
In contrast to the discourse evident currently in the media, reflecting a stressed sector in crisis, which has been verified by our own experiences as visiting lecturers who assess student teachers at a range of settings, a key finding from both Phase 1 and 2 is that inquiry-based project learning has the potential to foster an environment of well-being and sustained focus for both children and teachers. Our analysis suggests several factors that support such an environment to be fostered. These include established pedagogical approaches, time for teaching teams to develop shared understandings, an image of childhood where children are valued as theory makers, a focus on place-based pedagogy, and finally the quality of time, resources, and the physical environment. All 6 settings involved in Phase 2 have established core teaching teams that have been working together for some time. This has allowed for deep pedagogical discussions and for shared understandings to be established about the theoretical ideas underpinning their inquiry-based approaches and the pedagogical processes required to sustain an inquiry. At the settings with larger teaching teams, clear frameworks which offer guidance on how to establish an inquiry and processes for moving through the inquiry as it progresses have been developed. These frameworks help newer members of the teaching team to become familiarised with this approach and to ensure that there is consistency in their approaches with children. For example, the teaching team at Little Dove's Early Childhood Centre shared how they had worked to establish a framework for inquiry that makes explicit links with te whāriki and to utilise the curriculum as a tool to drive the inquiry. This careful work has enabled these teams to draw upon international approaches as inspiration, but also to interpret these ideas in terms of the context of Aotearoa, the curriculum, and their local contexts. We found the settings with smaller teams had also established clear pedagogical frameworks, in some cases over decades, although these were not as formally documented. These teams expressed how a stable team over the years fostered the growth and evolution of their pedagogical practices. At all 6 settings, children's theories, ideas, and interpretations are deeply valued, and these drive the inquiry process. For instance, at Little Dove's, a private early childhood setting catering for 2 to 4-year-olds in Auckland, the 2-year-olds were involved in an inquiry called the Curiosities of Acorns. The centre has a large oak tree in their playground, and the children had spent many weeks exploring acorns and developing clever strategies for manipulating them to move in different ways. Each new discovery was carefully documented and valued by the teachers, as Sonia explains here. We've broken it down so that we can celebrate the tiny. Sarah, the centre leader, added to this by explaining that the values of curiosity and exploration are equally important for the teachers. She said we need to recognise that teachers also want to stay curious, stay interested, be learning, be open to new ideas and new perspectives, rather than getting stuck in producing the same work day after day, year after year.
Another example is from Little Pumpkins, a small semi-rural setting in Hamilton. One of the head teachers explained that the current overarching project is focused on space and specifically the moon. We observed the project in action involving 6 children aged 3 to 4 years old, where the children were exploring different materials which represented the moon, including asteroids, moon dust and craters. The children explained they were making the moon. Each child had a paper plate containing white flour, black sand and a range of glass marbles, glass beads, golf balls and table tennis balls. One of the teachers asked, "What happens if we drop this on the moon?" One of the children replied, "This is an asteroid and it makes big holes." The teacher drew on a range of open-ended questions to provoke children's thinking about their inquiry, as well as making connections to some complex conceptual and scientific ideas. These children were exploring through the senses whilst they delighted in trial and error at the happenings because of their inquiry involvement. Following the inquiry, the teachers discussed how such experiences provide opportunities to develop new vocabulary and foster to-a-carnitana relationships, which is where older children support the learning of younger children. Teachers also observed and reflected on evidence of schemas, for example, trajectory, container and enveloping. Relationships are woven through the essence of inquiry-based learning. Each early childhood setting spoke about the value of fostering authentic relationships with children and teachers and the benefit of having strong belief in the power of collaborative learning contexts. Olivia, the studio teacher at Papakura Baptist Kindergarten, explained that in small group environment, that inquiry-based learning encourages children to build and strengthen relationships with each other. She said it's wonderful to see children's excitement in working together, in generating and expanding ideas and building on each other's explanations. Likewise, the teachers at Ohomai, a setting attached to a tertiary institute in Tauranga, identified a number of benefits of the collaborative nature of inquiry-based learning. The teachers reflected on how children develop a sense of unity and common goals, often according to their particular interests, and that children learn to question and to see answers, which encourages a great deal of critical thinking. Therefore, children engage together through learning that is significantly meaningful to them. Collaboration is valued within the inquiry partnership. It is happening when children and teachers co-construct meaning together. Sarah at Little Doves explained, "I think we and the children are constructing this inquiry together. We negotiate it together." Also, Jackie from Papakura Baptist noted, "I think they are, that being children and teachers, creating themselves as learners while they work." So they're developing a kind of meta picture of themselves, how they learn best, who they can work with, the people that they can't work with. And finally noting there's a massive amount in it, she explained that when you look deeper at what is happening in an inquiry, you can recognise that a similar thing is happening for the teachers, she said. We learn more and more about ourselves, and here the togetherness counts.
At each setting, the inquiries we observed were strongly linked to the local place and environment and the value of kaitiakitanga, which is the notion of guardianship and taking care of the environment. The importance of supporting children to connect to place is also a key tenet of Te Whāriki, which asserts that children should be supported to develop a sense of identity grounded in their understanding of their place. And in doing so, they are more able to work with change and look outward and be open to the perspectives of others. An example is the current inquiry at Pakuranga Baptist Kindergarten, where they have been exploring their local environment for several years. The kindergarten has an active Explorers program where a small group of children venture out each week to explore. The children have been theorising about the creatures that live in the local body of water and have been representing these ideas through their artwork in the studio. More recently, the teachers shared the local legend of Te Moko Ika Ahikawaru, an 8-limbed taniwha who fell in love with the Panmure Basin. One of the children arrived at kindergarten one morning with a plan to create a taniwha. A small group of excited participants gathered, and with the support of their teacher Jackie, they discussed appropriate materials and then worked through the morning to realise their plan, stopping often to discuss small challenges. Over the next days, opportunities to decorate and represent the taniwha were provided, and eventually they created a stop-motion movie retelling the story about the taniwha. At Rimu Kindergarten, the teaching team have made the decision to focus their inquiry on the local ngāhere, or bush. The group ventures out to the forest each week. The teachers focused first on giving children time to explore and become familiar with the space. Over time, they recognised the children's deep fascination in the traps that they observed. This became the focus of their inquiry, leading them to connect with the local primary school and environmental group. The children are now taking responsibility for refilling the ink traps that capture small creatures' footprints, and the group takes great pride in taking care of this space. Whilst each of the settings involved in this research prioritise time for inquiry each day, they do so in differing ways, with some having a dedicated period each day and others who weave the inquiry organically throughout the day. At each setting, once children are immersed in their inquiry work, they are not constrained by a set routine. The inquiry period concludes when children indicate they are ready to move on or simply need to take a break. The length of inquiries that were the focus of our research all span significant amounts of time. At Pakuranga Baptist, the current inquiry has evolved over several years, and at Daisy's, inquiries often last a year. Resources in each centre are plentiful, open-ended, and continuously available for children to use. Traces of inquiries are strongly visible long after they are completed at some settings. Jackie at Pakuranga Baptist explained the importance of this, that children who have transitioned to school often return to the setting with their younger siblings and feel valued, and younger children aspire to contribute to projects when they see that their work will have a lasting value. Te Whāriki leaves space for each setting to weave a local curriculum that reflects its own distinctive character and values. The settings involved in this research have chosen to weave inquiry-based project learning as a key strand of their curriculum. We have only touched on a fraction of the narratives collected as part of this research, but even so it is clearly evident that these settings are achieving a key aspiration of this document, that children are to be kept at the very centre of the learning process. Inquiry-based project learning is an approach built on the understanding that learning occurs through collaborative relationships and co-construction, in a classroom culture where both children and teachers are equally valued as active contributors. We theorise that this emphasis is a key factor in enabling these communities to develop a pathway to creating environments of calm, focused learning. We found the focus on place allowed each community to focus inward as children were supported to learn about their local place through a range of lenses, but also outward as each setting voiced a commitment to caring for the environment and their commitment to empowering children to understand that they do have an ability to make an impact on their environment. Inquiry provided both a shared focus and a shared sense of purpose that every member of the learning community could contribute to each day. This is significant given the current complex challenges that families and teachers in the early childhood sector are currently navigating. Penny et al. In their study of the impact of attending an ECE service on mitigating children's mental health issues noted that maintaining teachers' mental health is also crucial, along with the quality of the curriculum and the quality of the relationships in the setting. This research demonstrates that through adopting inquiry-based approaches which prioritise unhurried time for children to explore and develop working theories, and teachers who observe closely in order to respond sensitively to children's ideas, both children and teachers experience an environment of sustained focus, well-being and empowerment. Thank you very much for listening. We would like to acknowledge the generous participation of all of the children, teachers and families who've been involved in this project thus far.